everybody. Good to see you again. So let's talk about aspects between Sun and Mercury in Synastry. Not the most widely researched, but important nonetheless. Mercury is very important to look at in Synastry because it's a lot of how we will relate to each other on a daily basis, and that is the bulk of the relationship. So let's just talk about all the aspects between Sun and Mercury in this particular video. I'll just get them all out of the way in one video. So Sun-Mercury conjunction, very, very good. The Sun person has a lot of similarities with how the Mercury person thinks and interprets. So the Sun person's personal expression, their identity, how they assert themselves, and how the Mercury person interprets them are very much on the same page. And that's the same thing that you get with the sextile and the trine, is that easy and accurate interpretation of each other. The Mercury person does seem to look at the Sun person as somebody who does things in a reasonable way, a rational way, the correct way, because Mercury is all about that fastidiousness. So the Sun person is benefiting from a lot of the good assessments that the Mercury person has about them. The Sun person enjoys some amount of added confidence as a result of the correct interpretation that they feel they are receiving from the Mercury person. The Mercury person is very comfortable with how the Sun person goes about themselves. The Sun person sees the Mercury person as correct in how they think, what they want, how they express themselves as well. So it makes it easier to live together when we feel like the other person is interpreting us in a way that's pleasing to us. The sextile and the trine are very, very good to have, as well as the conjunction, because we're actively incorporating some of each other's experience and life view into our daily experience. The perspective that we offer to each other is appreciated. We don't resist that or see that as threatening to the way that we do things. So we don't feel like we have to alter much when it comes to how we're dealing with each other, or it's just easier to kind of mesh our patterns in daily life. You know, when we get up, when we go to bed, our idea of how we keep the kitchen, those things just really don't chafe on each other. So there's a lot of common ideas about what we should do today, attitudes about life in general. The Sun person is very approving of how the Mercury person conducts the hours and nuances of their life. Now, the square is a difficult aspect to have because oftentimes we are misinterpreting each other and we react negatively to that misinterpretation. So there can be a feedback loop that we get into with the difficult aspects between Sun and Mercury. The square is really the most difficult, I would say. The 45-degree angle and the 135-degree angle can also be little stinkers. So it's harder to see what is common to each other. Harder to just agree on the little things. Mercury is what we come across in daily life, what's common to us, and we often do not interpret those common things in the same way, or each other's behavior when it's about common things in an accurate way. So we can see both people as idiots, as coming up with judgments or ideas about the world that just don't make sense to us. And we can get into some arguments. We can really challenge each other's ideas about mercurial things, ideas about habits. How are we going to structure the daily life? There can be more minutia that we don't agree on with these difficult aspects. And the Mercury person does tend to see the Sun person as immovable or stubborn or even stupid. and the Sun person can see the Mercury person is very anal and inflexible. So the negative interpretation of each other does not lend itself to increasing the self-esteem of either person. So a lot of times with the square, we have to agree to disagree. Live and let live. Because we aren't going to have agreements about a good many things, about, how to pay the bills, how to do the dishes. We're going to have to allow each other to have our own style and to not have a lot of comment about that. So we find each other to be quite critical with this square, and many times we're just going to have to stay out of each other's business and to break up the work or the bill paying in a way where we are taking individual responsibility for our part, but we're not experiencing too much overlay in interacting with those things, because we're not going to agree how the other person should see or do things. With the in conjunction between the Sun and Mercury, we can really struggle with being on different planets. There may not be a lot in common when it comes to worldview, interpretation of events, and it can make it harder to agree on lifestyle, how we should conduct daily life. It is not a common thing to see in functioning relationships, the close in conjunction. We may have the Sun and Mercury in conjunct by sign, and that is going to show up in differences, but not as acutely as if we have a Ptolemaic in conjunction, especially the closer, the more irritating. So we don't have a lot in common when it comes to how to interpret daily life and often each other's reactions surrounding daily life or mercurial things. So unless we have a lot of other things that are showing commonalities, compatibilities, this can be something that can make it very hard to establish an initial connection, because we just may not have a lot to agree about or talk about from the outset. So it can make it harder to understand each other. If this is in a long-term relationship, then we may just have to agree to disagree. It won't be as conflictual as the square, where we can get into outright arguments. With the in conjunction, it's more like head scratching, or like, I just don't even know what to say about that, or I just don't even have an opinion. That's so far off from how I would do things. So it's more of a chasm of communication rather than arguments in communication. So also a difficult thing to have between siblings, because we can find each other just kind of alien and feel like, I can't believe we come from the same family. So it makes, again, interpreting each other a bit difficult as well, because we may not even know where to start. So a lot of difficulties can come from this one. The opposition between the Sun and Mercury can often be very healthy for people. It can encourage debate, lively sharing when it comes to our ideas. Sometimes we can get into challenging each other, having different ideas about what we should opinionate about. How we see things can be diametrically different. It's often a very solvable thing with the opposition, because once we share, once we argue it out, many times we can come to see that the other person has some good opposing points, and there are points that we needed ourselves to consider. So it can come with a good deal of the argumentativeness of the square, but it is more productive we often find value in the other person's viewpoint after we have explored the differences between the two of us. Some oppositions in synastry are actually pretty good. They don't require a great deal of effort or compromise or the change on our part. They're just pretty natural, and this is one of them. So we can have a pretty good give and take here between my point of view and your point of view, and learning about each other and stretching our own point of view to encourage the others. So there's a good amount of respect for what the other person has to contribute. We don't automatically see each other as an idiot like we will with the square. We may initially see each other as lacking in knowledge or experience, but after we start to exchange ideas, it's very possible that we may come to see that they had some good points and maybe some of our points were a little dull. So there's a good give and take, a natural give and take with the opposition. And the both of us can have very useful solutions for each other, particularly the Mercury person. They can come up with tools, ideas, solutions to problems that the Sun person can very much benefit from. So we may incorporate some of each other's ways of being into our own ways of being with the opposition and really find a lot of value in that. It is lively, but it is often healthy in relationships as well. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please check me out over on Patreon. I am posting quite a few course videos, full-length course videos. I will be doing live chats once we get a few more people over there to join in. My farm and garden blog will also be available there. So if you haven't been able to join my subscriber option on my website, check me out over on Patreon, because that's got some pretty darn good stuff going on over there. I will be back super soon with more super cool videos.